At the moment, we are not making any changes to any of our lists, so vue.js doesn't really have much work to do. However, in real-world applications, our data may often change, either from the user adding something into a form, or an update from our server, and maybe even a new blog post being added and updated with an API. Once Vue receives these updates, since we use the data property, it will update our HTML with the new values since data properties are reactive. This is simple enough for something such as a string of text, but what if we had thousands of blog posts? Imagine we deleted or updated one right in the middle. How does vue.js deal with this? The answer is to use a special attribute called a key. I'm going to add this over to our blog post, which is surrounded in the article. Just after our v for loop, we can add in a key attribute and set this equal to a particular value. This key is a way to provide a unique identifier to each one of these list items. If we had hundreds or even thousands of blog posts, having this unique key will allow vue.js to better identify each element when the time comes to update or reorder. If we never use keys, Vue would need to refer back to an algorithm to detect any of these changes. This key should be unique, such as a product ID, or for our blog we also have a unique ID for each blog post. Let's take a look. We have a unique ID, which is stored in this ID property. So we can pass in the post.id. If we add an attribute in just like this, vue.js would read this key value as a string called post.id, rather than extracting the actual values of the variable, which is the value of 1, 2, or 3. So if we were to insert some JavaScript or a variable, just like we're using here, we need to make this key dynamic. The way to do this is to use the vbind directive. And this is a prefix which is going to tell vue.js to read the value inside of here as a variable, rather than the string of text which is post ID. This is another vue.js directive, and this can also be shortened to simply just use the colon. And this is our key now taken care of. Also, when using the v4 directive, we can also access the index number. This is the position of each one of our items inside of the array. Our first blog post is the position 0, then position 1, and so on. To do this, we can wrap our variable inside of the brackets just like this. We can still access the post, but we can also access the index number 2. So if we wanted to, we could output the index, again inside of the double curly braces. We have position 0, position 1, and then position 2. And this is also just like JavaScript, we can add +1. So this could be the first value, the second value, and so on. This can be useful for things such as numbering our items we display, but for our blog exercise this is not required, so we can also remove this too. One of the key things to note is it is recommended to not use this index position as a value for our key. This is because if no key is supplied, Vue will make use of the index position anyway. And also, alongside binding this key attribute, we can also bind other attributes too, which we're going to take a look at next.